Hello. I truly regret not being able to be with you at the Warwick Economics Summit. I usually find occasions such as this conference an excellent venue for the exchange of ideas, and for someone like me, with an extremely busy schedule like yourselves, they offer a rare opportunity to be able to reflect and soak in new developments in academic thinking and policy areas. The diversity of the speakers and participants, together with the presence of world-renowned economic experts, makes your conference a really excellent venue, an excellent venue for discussion of global, political, financial, and economic issues. Thus, even though I could not join you physically, I am honored to be able to share a few thoughts with you through this message. Many of you may not be that familiar with the country which I head as Prime Minister. After all, Malta is the smallest economy in the European Union, with a population of just under 500,000 people and a gross domestic product that is just 0.1% of the EU's total. However, our small size disguises our economic vibrancy and dynamism. In their book on the size of nations, Alberto Alesina and Enrico Spolaore, who, if I'm not mistaken, is a member of the University of Warwick's Center for Competitive Advantage in the Global Economy, note that between 1960 and 2000, Malta was one of only 6 countries in the world, the others being the Asian tigers and Botswana, to achieve an annual average growth rate higher than 5%. If we focus on more recent developments, while the euro area's real GDP for 2016 was just 3% higher than it was in 2008, our real GDP was nearly 35% higher. While the countries surrounding us have faltered or lost their step, we have pressed on with rapid economic progress, which has translated in unprecedented social welfare for our citizens. In 2013, we had an unemployment rate of 6.3%, a full percentage point higher than Germany. We now have lowered this to just 3.6%, and together with Germany, we have the lowest unemployment rate in the euro area. Since 2013, we have seen our employment rate rise from under 60% to over 68%, so that we have now exceeded the euro area average. While in the rest of the euro area, the proportion of the population in severe material deprivation rose from under 6% in 2008 to nearly 7%. In Malta, we have reduced this proportion to just over 3%. I would like to explain how we managed to achieve this. While in the rest of Europe, other countries struggled from crisis to crisis. I think our experience holds many lessons and shows that good economic policy can make real difference in people's lives. The first thing I want to emphasize is that as a small economy, we have embraced open trade and open borders. While I understand and share some of the concerns that some might have on the impact of globalization and free trade, the bottom line remains that trade and the exchange of ideas, capital and technology that underpin it are fundamental to the generation of economic and social welfare. Malta has always benefited greatly from trade, thanks to our excellent geographical position. Besides building on our tradition as a maritime nation and a tourist destination, we have invested greatly in other forms of international exchange of goods and services. Developments such as the internet have opened up opportunities for us that were previously closed or too costly. They have enabled us to become an international hub for services such as remote gaming, movies, financial services, and the digital technologies. Given the great economic benefits that have accrued to Malta from open borders, I have become increasingly worried by the tendency in recent years to disparage globalization and to point at trade as a cause of economic hardship. I tend to disagree, and I do this fundamentally. If a society is careful to manage the economic benefits arising from globalization and to redistribute gains, I do not believe trade and international flows can do any noticeable harm. As a progressive politician, I believe that a lot of the hardships faced in some developed countries have nothing to do with trade as such, but are rather the result of the dismantling of public services due to the unthinking austerity. This brings me to my second point on our success as a country. As a government, we have refused to countenance austerity as an economic philosophy. When we were elected, we found ourselves inheriting a deficit of 3.5% of GDP and a debt to GDP ratio which had reached 71%. In the first meeting I had with EU Commission officials, they came up with a plethora of suggestions on how to raise taxes, cut social spending, and decrease government investment. Leaving Brussels, I told my finance minister, we will do exactly the opposite. We have cut income taxes for lower income workers and pensioners in all the budgets that we have passed through Parliament. We have introduced universal childcare for working parents. We have raised pensions and other social benefits. We boosted capital expenditure. The results were not those predicted by the austerity hawks. Our deficit turned into the highest fiscal surplus amongst EU member states. And our debt to GDP is now falling towards the 50% mark. Raising the disposable income of working families translated into higher spending, which reinvigorated the economy. Maintaining a healthy public investment program, sustaining industry through the hard times, this was the basis for economic recovery. Finally, boosting the social safety net meant that we minimized the chance that someone dropped out of society and out of economic activity. Our third takeaway is that economic and financial incentives work. When I became Prime Minister, one of my main aims was to change radically the social welfare system. In opposition, we planned to replace our passive benefit system with its underlying poverty trap into an active system that puts people back into work. We introduced the tapering of benefits so that when someone finds a job, they lose their benefits over 3 years and not immediately. We introduced the youth guarantee, whereby we focused on young persons so that they do not stay on the dole, but they engage in training or subsidized work. Rather than raising immediately the minimum wage, we introduced in-work benefits, a top-up for those in employment, but on low wages. More recently, we enacted that persons on the minimum wage get increases in subsequent years, so that they gradually are weaned off from this wage, without raising the starting level of the minimum wage itself immediately. All of these programs worked. Today, the number of youths registering for work is 80% less than in 2013. The number of those on social assistance has been halved. The rate of single parents in employment has doubled. The economic results Malta has achieved meant more and more social measures. The free childcare measure, adopted at the very beginning of our journey, proved to be not only an important social measure, but also an economic one. With this initiative, we managed to give incentives to more people, particularly women, either to get a job or to hone on their academic skills. The expansion of our workforce meant more revenue for government. This increased revenue, coming from sound economic footing and directly from measures such as the free universal childcare, and we could and we can invest more in our social welfare. These investments resulted in a sharp decrease in people who were at risk of poverty or material deprivation, the first one in over 20 years. We introduced initiatives intended to help persons with disability to get a job by, amongst others, obliging companies that employ more than 20 people to employ persons with disabilities, or else pay a contribution towards a national fund whose sole scope is to be used for giving the necessary training to persons with disability. We continued to give social assistance benefits to persons who were unemployed even after they found a job, whilst increasing the minimum wage for the first time in many, many years. As a progressive policymaker, I believe that employment is the best social policy and that my task is to ensure that there are as few barriers to work, as many incentives as possible. I am pleased to say that we have presided over a job-rich economic growth, such as that every year since we've been in office, the percentage increase in employment in our country was always the highest in the European Union. Thus, my message to you is that when combined, open trade and open borders, intelligent fiscal policy, and active labor and social policies can generate fast economic growth that favors all in society. However, if one of these three elements is missing or is given less importance than the others, the risks are that economic growth and social welfare will falter. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share some thoughts with you. I wish you a very successful conference and look forward to reading about its proceedings.